It turned out to be a pivotal moment in British policing. The controversial containment of protesters at the G20 demonstrations in London, in which a bystander, Ian Tomlinson, was shoved by an officer and later died. Now the police watchdog has criticised those tactics and officers' training. The police were accused of failing to allow peaceful protest, whilst their containment tactics, known as kettling, needed to change. A review was also needed into the use of batons and riot shields. The Metropolitan Police said it would be looking at officers' training. Here's our Home Affairs correspondent, Simon Israel.
This report is the first strategic response to the thousands of G20 images like this. The aggressive use of shields, the proportionality of force, and the tactic of containment or kettling. Her Majesty's Inspectorate of Constabulary found senior officers were too focused on dealing with disorder and not enough on allowing peaceful protest. That public order training and tactics were inadequate for the modern day, and that some commanders lack the necessary knowledge on human rights.
You have to see the public order issue about protest through a new lens. And training is part of that new lens. And the new lens is, we will not start at the beginning and think, is it lawful or unlawful? We'll start with the presumption in favour of it. We will endeavour to facilitate it unless it becomes unreasonable.
There are 12 recommendations which are by no means in themselves revolutionary. Better planning, training and communication, with the aim of reducing confrontation and the risk of alienating public confidence in an age of citizen journalism where every police action can be recorded and dispatched to websites in a matter of seconds.
I think in this era, when more protest is likely, I think there is a risk of more disruption because the thing becomes more conflictual. I think there's more likelihood of problematic images of the police because everybody has cameras now, and I do think that the public will progressively pick up on that and in their own British way become concerned, collectively concerned over a period of time. That's why I think we should change.
Yet according to a Mori poll conducted by HMIC for this report, the public are divided about the handling of the G20 protests. 46% thought the police dealt with them fairly or very well, but 45% felt the police handled them not very or not at all well. But the poll also revealed considerable public support for the tactic of kettling. 77% said it was sometimes or always justified to contain protesters, and that rose to 84% when there was a threat to the safety of the public. The report does not reject the Metropolitan Police's tactic of containment.
We accept with the issue of containment, it is not perfect. We've always accepted that. It's about us making sure we learn the lessons and get better on the rare occasion that we do use it.
Latest figures from the Independent Police Complaints Commission show that a total of 60 complaints of police conduct are now the subject of official inquiries, the most notable being that into the death of Ian Tomlinson. This report would not have happened had Ian Tomlinson not died shortly after being hit and pushed to the ground in this passageway. While it does not go into those circumstances, the report emphasises the need for police to respect the rights of each and every individual protester, rather than view the demonstration as a whole in deciding how to react and what tactics to use. The clear implication from this report is to try and ensure that there's no repeat of the Tomlinson tragedy. Today's report is just the beginning. The police watchdog warns the service isn't yet ready to cope on the scale of the forthcoming Olympics. A closer examination of possible alternative tactics will be published later this year.
I think the police have been misbehaving on protests for years. It's just that at the G20 they got found out by the media, by the people that were filming it themselves, and this has provoked some self-examination, and this report is welcome in that regard, but it depends on whether it translates into different behaviour on the ground at future protests like this summer's climate camp.
A new set of guidelines to all forces on public order was only issued 2 years ago, but now that's destined to be rewritten. where the strictures are clearer about what's expected of officers in pressured situations, and where the watchdog advises there should be only one school of thought.
Simon Israel reporting. Earlier I spoke to the incoming president of the Association of Chief Police Officers, Sir Hugh Ord. I began by putting it to him that the police had got the balance wrong at the G20 between the needs of law and order and the right to protest.
Well, certainly the report shows that the Metropolitan Police did an awful lot of things very well. It made the point they policed 5,000 demonstrations a year. They also clearly identified issues where we need to do some work, and as the incoming president of ACPO, I need to take some of that training and indeed looking at the manual on board, which of course we will do. The Metropolitan Police asked for this review, and I'm sure they're more than willing to accept the recommendations, and we'll do all we can to drive that progress forward as quickly as we can.
The difficulty here was that this was about the most prestigious meeting you could possibly have to police, and clearly security dictated that they really didn't want any protests at all.
Well, of course, the tradition of British policing is to tolerate protest. It's a tradition of British society, and as a police officer, I will die in a ditch over the right of people to protest. It's something we shall not and could not and should not challenge.
What you've said is philosophically, obviously, very, very germane, but what people are going to remember, the images that were picked up by people's local mobile phones and the rest of it, of really serious hammering with police battles, a lot of people injured, some really horrible scenes that you do not expect to see on the streets of British cities at the hands of the police.
We do need to put the report in context. The report clearly said that the Metropolitan Police did an awful lot of things very well, and I think we need to remember that whilst we still focus and show a high degree of willingness to learn from the issues that have been raised, to make the training better where we need to make sure the policies and procedures are in place. That's my responsibility. I take that fully on board in my new role. And so the next time we have one of these complicated issues, we police it in an even more professional way than the Met did its level best to do on that occasion.
And as you look at the policing manual, will kettling remain in it?
Let's be clear around this. The human rights legislation is in place. It's not a threat to good policing, it's a support to good policing. In my current job as a Chief Constable of Northern Ireland, very sadly, we have had to deploy live fire in public order situations entirely compliant with human rights. The officers have had to return fire to save people they were trying to protect from incoming ammunition. So the human rights legislation requires proportionality, but we have to face up to the fact there are people in the society who do not want to demonstrate peacefully, who want to actually destroy that right by infiltration and by attacking police and doing their level best to show police in a bad light. So it's that complexity we have to come to terms with. That does not mean we should not be open to change, and I'm a big believer in learning from these situations and moving policing on to the next dimension.
Sir Hugh Ord, the incoming president of ACPO, talking to us earlier from Manchester.